Hello everyone, and welcome to today's video. Today's video is a very special one as I have 4 scary Hmong hunting stories to share with you all today. Before we get started, consider becoming a YouTube member by clicking that join button. Also, leave a like and subscribe so that way I can support my adult beverage addiction. And without further ado, enjoy the show. This happened to me about 3 years ago during rifle season in northern Minnesota. This piece of public land was north of the Twin Cities, far enough where the towns get smaller, the cell phone service gets worse, and eventually the woods start to feel like they go on forever, getting close to Canada. I grew up hunting with my dad and uncles. In our family, hunting was just never about shooting something. It was about waking up early, freezing your hands, and coming home with stories even if nobody got anything. My dad was always careful about the woods. He always told us not to answer if we heard someone call our names from deep in the woods, especially when no one else was around and you could see them. If it really was a person, they would keep talking normal, but if the voice only called your name one time, or if it sounded like someone close to you but felt wrong, he said to ignore it. That year, it was just me and my cousin Brian. We both got permission from our wives to go for one full weekend, so we left Friday night after work and slept in his truck near the public land parking area. It was cold, but not terrible, maybe low 20s in the morning. We had sleeping bags, a little propane heater we only used before sleeping, and enough snacks to survive like college students. Our plan was simple. Brian would sit on the west side near a swamp edge, and I would walk in farther toward an aspen stand where we had seen a deer sign during scouting. We both had GPS pins saved on our phones, and we had radios too, but the batteries weren't that great, so we mainly planned to text when we could find service. Opening morning was normal. Too normal, honestly. I walked in around 5:15 a.m. with my headlamp on low. The trail was muddy in some places and frozen in others. Every step made that crunching sound that feels too loud when you're trying to be quiet. I got to my spot before legal shooting time and sat up against a tree. For the first few hours, nothing happened. I saw squirrels, birds, and one grouse that scared me when it flew up. At around 9 a.m., I heard 2 shots far away. Around 10, Brian told me that he had seen a doe, but no buck. I texted him back and said that I hadn't seen anything but squirrels and some birds. The first weird thing happened closer to noon. I was eating some food that I packed, and I was looking toward the low area when I heard Brian say my name. Not on the radio, and not from my phone, but from the trees behind me. It was clear enough that I turned my head right away. It sounded exactly like him. The same tone, the same tired voice he uses when he's not trying to talk too loud. He said my name once, and I waited, and then nothing. I almost answered. My mouth actually moved. Then I remembered my dad's warning. I stopped myself. I slowly looked around the trees behind me, and I didn't see anything. No orange, no movement, and no person. I checked my phone. No service. I told myself that maybe Brian had walked over and was messing with me. That would have been stupid because we both knew not to walk around during the middle of the day without telling each other, but Brian jokes around sometimes. I whispered his name very quietly though, not loud enough for the woods to hear, but just enough for me to feel like I did something. Then I heard it again, but farther to my left. This time, the voice said, "Come here." It still sounded like Brian, but something about it was off. It sounded like him through a wall, like the voice had the right shape, but there was like no actual voice behind it. I don't know how to explain it, but all I know was that I felt goosebumps go up my arm. My hands got cold even inside my gloves, and I sat completely still and listened. I was trying to make it make sense. Maybe there was another hunter who had a similar voice, but no matter what I told myself, it was freaking me out. Then my phone vibrated. It was a text from Brian. but it had been sent almost 20 minutes earlier and only came through because my phone caught one little bar. It said, "You good? I heard you call me." I stared at that message for a long time. I had not called him. I wanted to call him right away, but the phone had no service again. I sat there, looking around, and that is when the woods got too quiet. Not completely quiet, but quieter than it was before. The birds stopped chirping, the squirrels stopped moving, and it felt like the whole area was waiting. I decided that I was done. I unloaded my rifle, got up, and started walking back toward the main trail. As I walked, I heard leaves moving behind me. At first, I thought it was my own footsteps echoing. The leaves were dry, and every step I took made noise, but after a few seconds I stopped. The footsteps behind me took 2 more steps. Crunch, crunch. Then they stopped too. I stood there with my heart beating hard. I did not turn around right away. I just continued walking like normal and not showing any fear or any panic. I kept walking, and behind me, the footsteps started again. They stayed maybe 20 or 30 yards back. They weren't rushing, it was just following me. Every time I stopped, it would stop, and every time I walked, it walked. When I finally reached the main trail, I saw Brian standing near a bend, wearing orange and holding his rifle across his chest. He looked just as scared as I felt. We both pointed at each other at the same time, like we were making sure that the other person was real. Before I could say anything, he whispered, "Why did you call me?" And I said, "I didn't." His face changed. He told me he had been sitting by the swamp when he heard me calling from deeper in the woods. He said my voice told him to come help drag something. He thought that maybe I shot a deer and lost service, so he started walking toward me. But after maybe 10 minutes, he realized that the voice was moving farther away from my stand, deeper into the swamp. That was when he texted me and started backing out. As we were walking and talking, we both heard it. From behind us, where I had just come from, Brian's voice said my name again. Then, my voice answered from the swamp side. "Over here." We did not run, but man did we walk fast. I got to the truck, packed up, and left without eating lunch. On the drive home, Brian barely talked. I called my dad when we got service and told him about what happened. He was quiet for a few seconds, and then he said that we shouldn't worry and that he will burn some joss paper and burn some incense and pray to our ancestors and grandparents to help us. After that, we hung up the phone and continued our long drive back home. Nothing followed us after that incident. At least I don't think so. But I never hunted on that aspen stand again and on that public land. Sometimes Brian still brings it up, but only when it's just us. We both know what we heard, and it definitely was not us. Whatever was out there knew our voices, and it wanted us to go deeper into the woods. This story took place in western Wisconsin, not too far from where my uncle lives. I had hunted that area for many years, mostly during bow season. It was one of those places where you park by a gravel lot, walk through a strip of pines, cross a small creek, and then you hit a big hardwood ridge. It's not a secret spot, but if you walk far enough, you can usually get away from other people. That season, I was hunting alone. My wife does not love when I hunt by myself, but I always tell her where I park and when I plan to come out. I share my location when I have service, and I carry a small first aid kit. I'm not careless. I know that the woods can be dangerous even without anything paranormal. And not only that, but there has been racism against Hmong people in this area for the past couple of years, so we have to be a little careful. The day this happened was in late October. The leaves were mostly down and the ground was damp from the rain the night before. I went in at around 2 p.m. for an evening set. I had a small hang-on stand already placed about 15 feet up in a tree overlooking a trail crossing. I climbed up, clipped in, and settled down. For the first hour, it was peaceful. Wind in the trees, a few squirrels, one woodpecker. At around 4 p.m., I heard something moving below the ridge. It was slow and steady, so I got ready. A small 8-point buck came out from behind the brush. He wasn't huge, but he was a good deer. Under normal circumstances, I would have probably taken the shot if he had come into range. He walked out at about 35 yards and stopped behind a fallen log. I waited for him to turn. That was when I noticed he was not looking at me. He was staring past my tree, up the hill behind me. His eyes were forward. His body was stiff. He didn't stomp and he didn't blow, he just stared. I slowly turned my head to see what he was looking at. There was nothing there, just trees, brush, and the slope going up toward the old logging road. I looked back at the buck. He was still staring. Then he lowered his head and took one step backward. That was weird. Deer do not usually back up like that unless they're trying to avoid something right in front of them. But there was nothing between him and me. The wind was in my favor, and he did not know that I was there. Then I heard a cough. It definitely wasn't a deer coughing, but it also wasn't a person coughing either. It sounded dry, like a really old guy clearing his throat, but it came from behind my tree, maybe 10 yards away. The buck jumped, but he still did not run. He looked toward the sound with his whole body shaking. I could see it. His legs were trembling. I turned again slowly. Still nothing. At this point, I forgot about shooting. I had the arrow ready, but I was not thinking about the deer anymore. I was listening. The woods felt wrong. I know people say that a lot, but hunters understand what that means. You can tell when the woods are normal and when every little thing is suddenly aware of something that you are not. The cough came again. Closer. This time, it sounded right below me. I looked down, expecting to see another hunter and maybe somebody walking under my stand without knowing that I was there, but there was no person. There was nobody wearing any camo or any orange gear. There was no movement. The buck made a sound I had never heard from a deer before. It was like a low, shaking breath. Then it turned and walked away stiff-legged. It walked backward a few steps first, then turned sideways and slipped into the brush. I stayed in the stand because I didn't know what else to do. I told myself that maybe it was a sick animal, maybe a raccoon, maybe a coyote with a weird cough. That made sense enough to keep me from panicking. About 10 minutes later, I heard leaves crunching behind me on the logging road. That relieved me at first. Human footsteps are easy to recognize. I thought it was another hunter walking out. I turned my head slightly and saw a man in brown clothes walking along the ridge. He was maybe 60 yards away. He wasn't wearing orange, which was the first thing that bothered me. It was bow season, so maybe he wasn't required to wear it depending on what he was doing. But on public land, most people still wear something visible. He moved slowly with his hands hanging at his sides. I almost called out to him. Then I noticed his clothes. They looked old. They weren't old and not super worn out, but it looked old like something from a photo. A brown jacket, dark pants, and a cap that sat low on his head. He walked with his head down, like he was looking for something on the ground. He stopped almost directly above my stand on the ridge. Then he turned his head toward me. I could not see his face clearly. The light was behind me and he was in shadow, but I knew that he was looking at me. I raised one hand slightly, like hunters do when they want to make sure someone sees them. He didn't wave back. Then he lifted his right arm and pointed down the hill, toward where the buck had gone. I looked that way for 1 second. When I looked back, he was gone. There was nowhere for him to go that fast. The ridge was open, The leaves were down, and I should have heard him walk away. At least, I should have seen him. I sat there until dark because I was honestly afraid to climb down. I kept telling myself that maybe he had stepped behind a tree, then walked away while I was looking down, but I knew that that wasn't right. When the light ended, I packed up as fast as I could. I climbed down, and that's when I smelled something strange. It was like wet clothes and old smoke. At the base of my tree, in the mud, I saw boot prints. They were not mine. Mine had a modern tread pattern, and these were smooth on the bottom with a small heel. The strange part was that they circled my tree 3 times, a full circle, and then they stopped. I took a photo, but when I checked later, it was blurry. Not completely black or fake looking, just blurry enough where you could say it was mud and shadows. Come on, man, you should have sent it to me so I could show everyone. When I got back to my uncle's house, I told him about the man. He asked me where I had been hunting, and I showed him on the map. He said that he's not sure what it was, but that he'll tie a red string for me because it might have been a spirit of a person that used to have lived there a long time ago. He said that he's never experienced anything strange when he's gone to hunt there, but he's glad that the spirit didn't do anything bad to me. He said that maybe the spirit was curious about me. Since our town doesn't have a lot of Asian people, I probably stood out to that spirit. After that, my uncle got some red string and tied it on my wrist and chanted some magical words. This was to protect me in the case that, whatever it was, if that spirit had decided to come back. After that, I did not hunt that ridge again that season. The part that still bothers me is the buck. Animals know things before we do, and that deer was not scared of me. It was scared of whatever was behind my tree. And whatever that man was, he seemed to wanted me to follow the deer down the hill. Except, luckily, I decided to stay on my stand until it was time to leave. Hey guys, quick message before the next story. As you know, due to everyone's undying support, our channel has seen tremendous growth in the past few months in comparison to the years since this channel has been created. As our community grows closer to 10,000 subscribers, I'm hoping to work with potential sponsors to help this channel grow even faster. This will give me the chance to try out different video formats and ideas as I hope to one day talk in front of a camera instead of being a faceless voice. So, if all things go well, you might get a face reveal from me in the near future. If you're interested or know anyone interested in partnering up with this channel, reach out to my email listed in the description below. Thank you so much to everyone for supporting this channel, and here's the next story. This happened to me in central Minnesota. I was hunting public land with my older brother and his father-in-law. I was still pretty new to hunting at that time. I had gone out a few times before, but I was not as comfortable sitting alone in the woods as they were. The area that we hunted had a good amount of vegetation and a little clearings where people had obviously hunted for years. There were old ribbons tied to branches, cut shooting lanes, and a few homemade stands that looked like they had been there forever. On public land, you're not supposed to treat anything like it belongs only to you, but hunters still know which stands look abandoned and which ones somebody still uses. There was one old wooden ladder stand near a small opening that everyone avoided, not because of a rule, but just because it looked unsafe. The boards were gray and warped, and one side leaned slightly into the tree. My brother said to not climb it because it looked like it would collapse. We walked past it in the morning on our way to the spots. I remember joking that only a ghost would sit on that stand. My brother's father-in-law did not laugh. He just scolded me and said, "Don't joke like that out here." So I shut up. I sat about 200 yards from that old stand, near a trail that cut through the woods. The morning was slow. It was cold enough that my nose kept running and my feet started hurting from sitting still. At around 8:30, I heard a shot far away. At around 9, I heard someone walking but never saw it. At around 10 o'clock, I heard a wood creak. It came from the direction of the old stand. At first, I thought it was just the wind. The trees were moving a little, and old wood makes noise. But then I heard it again. Creak. Then a quiet knock, like someone shifting their weight on the platform and bumping the side rail. I slowly raised my binoculars and looked through the brush. From where I sat, I could see part of the old stand between the trees. Nobody was in it. At least I didn't see anybody. I lowered the binoculars and listened. A minute later, I heard the sound of someone coughing into a sleeve. It was close enough that I felt my stomach tighten. I used my radio and whispered to my brother, "Are you near the old stand?" Static came back at first, and then his voice. "No, don't move. Why?" I said, "I hear somebody." He paused just before answering. "Just sit tight. Could be another hunter." That was the only thing that made sense. Someone could have walked in from the other side and sat near that stand, but if that was true, I should have noticed them. They should have made normal walking sounds and answered if I had called out. So I waited another 10 minutes, and then the creaking started again, but this time it sounded like someone climbing down the ladder. I watched the stand through my binoculars. The ladder was moving slightly. Not a lot, but just enough to see it shake. But there was no one on it. My mouth was dry. I tried to swallow and could not. I remember thinking, do not shoot, do not panic, and don't do anything stupid. I kept my gun pointed in a safe direction and just watched. The sound reached the bottom of the ladder. Then I heard footsteps in the frozen grass. They were coming toward me. But I couldn't see anybody. The grass bent in a thin line, like someone was walking through it, but no person was there. Every few steps, it stopped, then continued. I clicked my safety on and whispered into the radio, "I'm backing out." My brother answered right away, "Okay, come toward me slowly." I stood up, and the second I moved, the footsteps stopped. Then I heard something whisper from the brush. I couldn't tell what it was. It was like whispering gibberish, like that was enough for me. I didn't run, but I just walked really fast, keeping my eyes on the ground and my finger nowhere near the trigger. I was praying my head to God to protect me and make sure that whatever it was didn't chase me. When I reached my brother, he looked past me and asked, "Who was behind you?" I turned around so fast that I almost slipped. There was nobody there. He said while I was walking toward him, he saw a dark shape between the trees behind me. He thought it was another hunter at first, but it was too tall and too narrow. It moved from tree to tree without making normal steps. He did not want to say anything over the radio because he didn't want me to panic. We met up with his father-in-law and told him about what happened. He didn't seem surprised. He told us that he heard stories about this area from other Hmong hunters. Supposedly years before, a man had fallen from a stand in that area and was found too late. Nobody knew if it was that exact stand or another one nearby, but after that, people started hearing some weird noises in that area. His father-in-law was calm and told us to walk backward to make sure that whatever it was wouldn't follow us by following our footprints. So we walked backward almost all the way back to our car and got into the truck. We drove off and went somewhere else to go hunt the next day. The strange thing is that later I looked up old hunting accidents in that county, trying to see if I could find anything, but I couldn't find an exact story. Whatever it was, after that, I don't go around joking in the woods about ghosts and the supernatural anymore. It was a couple of years ago, before I had kids, during small game season. Me and two friends went out to go do some hunting to look for some rabbits and squirrels. I will call them Kevin and Thu. It was late afternoon when we got there because Kevin had work in the morning and Thu was always late to everything. We only planned to hunt for a couple of hours, then walk out before dark. The area had lots of trees mixed with thick brush. There were straight rows of trees in some places, and when you looked down at them, it felt like looking through long, dark hallways. At first, the trip was normal. We saw a couple of rabbit tracks and some squirrels, and Kevin missed a few shots. Thu kept complaining that his boots were rubbing his ankles, and I just remember laughing a lot because it felt like a regular day. Then we found a ribbon. It was a strip of red cloth tied to a pine branch. Not survey tape. Cloth. It looked old and faded, like it had been there for a long time. A few yards further, there was another one. Then another. Kevin said that maybe someone used them to mark a trail or something like that. And Thu asked why it was cloth, and nobody really could answer that question. We followed our planned route anyway. Not the ribbons. The wind started picking up and the sky turned that gray color. That's when we decided to circle back toward the truck. The moment we turned around to go back to the truck, that was when we saw a light between the pines. It looked like a lantern, not a flashlight beam, but it was warm and yellow, moving slowly through the trees about 100 yards ahead. Kevin said, "There's somebody out there." That made sense. I mean, it was public land, there was other hunters, and perhaps someone was walking out with an old lantern for some reason. A little weird, but not impossible. We called out, "Hunter coming through!" The light stopped. Then it turned off. We waited, and nobody answered. Kevin raised his voice again and called out, "Hey, we're walking out, just letting you know." Still nothing. I started feeling uneasy because if you're on public land, nearing dark, and someone calls out to you, you answer, and you don't just stand there silently, and especially turn off your lamp. It felt like somebody was going to hunt us. We gave that area space and angled away from it. After maybe 5 minutes, another light appeared to our left. It was the same yellow, warm color. Then, another one behind it. 2 lights moving between the pine rows. Thu whispered, "Bro, let's just go." Kevin said that it was probably other hunters, but even he sounded unsure. We started walking faster, not running, just moving with purpose. The pine rows made it hard to tell a distance. Every time we looked left, the lights seemed to move with us, always staying between the trees. Sometimes one would disappear behind a trunk and not come out the other side. Then it would appear farther ahead. The woods smelled strange too. Thu noticed at first and asked if we smelled the weird smell. Kevin said that it might be someone camping nearby, but there was no campground there. I can't really describe the smell, but it smelled kind of like chemicals in the air. Then the bells started. They weren't loud bells, but they were small bells. All 3 of us kept on walking. At some point, we realized that we were not on the path anymore. That scared me more than everything else. We had GPS on our phones, but the signal was bad. And for some reason, the compass kept on spinning. Kevin was good with directions, but even he admitted that the pines all looked the same. The rows made everything confusing, and the truck should have been south of us, but every opening looked like the same place. Thu started to get nervous. Thu said in Hmong that we should pray to our ancestors to help guide us out of this forest. That was when we all started to pray to our ancestors and asked them to help guide us out of this forest. One of us would pray while the other 2 kept a lookout in the distance for anything. After that, we picked a direction that we felt made the most sense and kept walking. This was when we noticed a deer a couple of yards ahead of us. It was just standing there, looking at us. It wasn't scared of us or anything. It just kept staring back at us. Then it turned around and kept on going down the path. For some reason, we decided to follow it, so we kept on going and following the path that the deer took. The deer turned a few times, going through brushes and through trees, and we made sure to not lose sight of it. Before we knew it, We made it back to where we had parked the truck. But when we got there, the deer was nowhere to be seen. We swore that we had just saw the deer a few seconds ago, and now it had just disappeared, but it led us back to our truck. We didn't say anything, we just understood and got into the truck and drove straight home. On the way home, Lou suggested that it must have been one of our ancestors coming to guide us, to make sure that we got out of those woods safely, and that whatever it was, or whatever spirit it was in the woods, was trapping us in there, making us walk around in circles. We talked about the lanterns and theorized that they weren't actually lanterns, but instead spirits. That these were spirits of some sort, trying to lure us deeper into the woods and make sure that we don't get out. After that, we all got home and nothing happened for a while. But after a few months, Kevin got really sick. They said that he lost his spirits in Bonpli during the time that we were lost in the woods. That's when his parents asked him about what happened, and he told them everything. His parents had a shaman come and conduct a ceremony for him at his house, and eventually he got better after that. But ever since then, we don't go hunting at that public land anymore. And I will always remember that place because it was one of those tree plantations where they had those long rows of trees, and you could see like it was a hallway. Now that my kids are getting bigger, they ask me to take them hunting, but even now I don't like to go hunting like I used to anymore. Guys, this is the reason I don't go hunting. The only hunting I do is in the grocery store. I just go, pick out a nice piece of steak with good marbling, and that's all the hunting that I'll do. And I have plenty of relatives that hunt, so if I ever need some wild game, I can always ask them. I give them a couple of dollars to go buy some ammo, and they can come and give me some venison or some squirrel meat. It's really a good idea to do that. Let me know if you guys have ever had any weird hunting encounters or experiences out in the wood. Anyways, that's the end of the video. Remember to leave a like and subscribe. We are so close to 10,000 subscribers, and thank you all for watching. I will see you all in the next one.